get nervous. I do.
My good. We are live.
What would you ask if you had just one question? Yeah, yes, yes, yes. I know God is great and yes, yes, He is. God is good and yeah. What if God was one of us?
Thank you, everyone, again so much for tuning into an awesome, amazing podcast episode here at Brian's Place. That was a part of Cheryl Pepsi Riley's song called "What If God Was One of Us," and I really like that song because I always pray that in every area of life that I can be a reflection of the evidence of God on the earth. And I, also pray that marriages all over would also be able to be a reflection of the evidence of God on the earth. And so, speaking of marriages, we have an awesome, special, amazing guest today. Today's guests, they've been on here before, back on season 4 of the podcast. So I'm grateful to have them back. They are truly a phenomenal blessing, leaving their impact and influence literally all across the nations. Today's guests have an awesome ministry, rich relationships,
Refuge.
Refuge, where their mission is to empower individuals with tools, self awareness, and strategies necessary to build and maintain strong, healthy, and thriving marriages. They also offer rich relationship refuge online courses, as well as premarital counseling and identity counseling. They are a tremendous couple. They have a rich relationship podcast and they help change the trajectory of lives for the better for singles and couple alike. They've been married for about 3 decades, and most of all, their marriages truly reflects the heartbeat of God. And if I were to put a title on how they met, I would call it The Power of the Pencil. Please welcome Gil and Renee Beavers.
Hello. Thank you so much for having us, David.
Definitely welcome, and thank you again for coming on.
Oh, absolutely. Appreciate the invite.
Great. It's as I mentioned, it's definitely a blessing to have the visual aspect, whereas before it was just the audio. So
Right,
Yeah.
right. Now, do we sound like we look? Some people always say you don't sound nothing like you look.
yeah, you
I
do.
thought you were taller. No, just based on your voice. No, I'm just joking.
It's all good, but yeah, you sound great, look fabulous. You're
Oh, thank
doing
you.
your
Look,
thing.
so do you.
Thank you. So as I mentioned, the power of the pencil. Would you mind sharing how long you've been married and how you met?
You want to start it, or you want me to start it?
You start.
I'll start it. We this December it'll be 35 years that we've been
Wow.
married. But we actually dated for 3 years before we even got married. So I guess you can say it's been 38 years that we've been together and in relationship with each other. And it's funny with the way the pencil story goes. We were in back in Detroit. That's where we're originally from. We were in like the summer youth work program, where you go and work for the city and they give you some chores to do around the city. Most of it was like just knocking down weeds in a field, a vacant lot field or something like that. But then the second half of the summer, they would bring you into these classrooms and give you these classes on, empowering in business. I mean, I can't even remember the subject matter of the classes, but I remember we were in the class together and I was getting up to go. I don't know whether
You
it was.
walked into the room.
I walked into the room and she actually, when she pushed her pencil off the desk, and I stopped and I picked it up for her and just handed it back to her, just like you normally would, just because it fell off her desk. And she said,
I was going to say hi to you, but I wasn't sure if you would say hi back.
and I said, I always say hi to young,
Lovely
lovely
lady.
ladies.
And
That's
I was
why.
smitten.
See, I always say I thought I had game, but nah, you know, I guess today's vernacular they would say swag. I wouldn't call it that. It was just I was just responding. And that
That's
basically started the relationship when we were 13 and 14. A pencil.
a pencil, right? There was a hidden agenda behind the pencil. I like
I
that.
heard,
Yes,
yeah,
I
yeah.
had an agenda. I wanted to get his attention.
As they say, give me your number, give me your
Right.
date.
Well, 35 years later, it definitely looks like it worked. So
Yeah,
It definitely did.
yeah,
It
it
definitely
did.
Yeah.
that is great. So, would you mind sharing, like, what was it that made you want to help build, strengthen various relationships?
For me, I would say my parents were not married, but relationships have always been important to me, even as a little girl. I always thought that relationships and families were important. And so, because I didn't have the example of what marriage would look like, because, like, for me, I didn't want to get married. It was
Okay.
never on my mind. I didn't want to get married. I didn't want to have kids. I just wanted to be able to take care of myself. And actually, I was in love with food. I wanted to marry bologna and cheese, and I wanted my own bathroom and my own house and my own car. So marriage was not on my trajectory, but when I met Gil, it was something about him that seemed different, and he just intrigued me. And so I was like, how do I get his attention? So I just pushed my pencil off the desk.
And for me, I grew up in a divorced home. You know, my parents got divorced when I was, I think it was about 7 years old,
Mhm.
and that impacted me to the point there where I knew what I did not want. You know, I knew if I wanted to, and even from a young age, I knew I wanted to be married. Even before I was even dating, I just knew I wanted a wife. You know,
Mhm.
even as a young kid, and I say kid because I was probably not even a teenager yet. You know, but I knew I wanted to be married, and once we did actually started dating and things like that, and we actually got married, I remember I was we're a military family, so I was at work on my job and just coming back from our honeymoon, which was just an overnight trip in our room
In the dorms
and
and
going,
Chinese food.
yeah, some real low budget because I was so broke it wasn't even funny. But what we did was when I got back to work, my supervisor was saying, hey, he was married, you know, a few years. He was like, if you want to have a good marriage, all you need to do is work on your marriage. He just kept saying, work on your marriage. And I said, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And he just looked at me and didn't give me nothing, you know, no advice, no books to read, no nothing. And that stuck with me because I had already been a product of divorce, but I also knew that there was something about being married that you have to work at. And
Right.
not even knowing anything, I just said, you know what, I'm going to figure this thing out, because if I want to be married, I want to do it right.
Right.
You know, so he gave us no advice, and that's something that over the years that we've just decided that what we do in our marriage, we're just going to share with others. And if they can glean something from it, great. If they have a great marriage, that's a plus. But if they don't, maybe they can hear something, whether it's through the podcast or the videos or something, or the books
Or
or
the people
whatever,
that we know.
or the people that we know, that they can get something out of it and say, okay, we're going to try that, just so we can stem the tide of divorce and how it has wreaked havoc on our society for years, you know.
Mhm.
So that was just our motivator, really.
Yeah.
To not be what we saw, but also because I think people teach you one or two things: what to do and what not to do. So I
Mhm.
just knew I didn't want to be an example of what not to do.
Yeah.
So I just felt like for me it was I worked hard to be an example of what to do and to do what I enjoyed. And I've always Gil's always been my best friend, and so I've always enjoyed our relationship.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome, man. I like what you said, and I've noticed, especially in the church, like, in addition to marriage, it's like for a long time it was the issue with sex, where you'd hear people say, "Don't have sex till you're married. Don't have sex till you're married," but not a lot of churches, were able to show a blueprint, like, okay,
Right.
you're
Of
saying
what to
don't
do.
have sex, but what does that look like? So with marriages, that's one thing I really like about you guys. You provide a blueprint on how make successful relationships look like and what it should look like.
And no, and that's something that we did intentionally, because we said, you know what, there's a framework to marriage.
To everything.
To everybody, every person, every relationship, every marriage is unique in its own way. But there are some fundamental principles and guidelines that everybody has to follow, just like anything else, if you want to have success. So we just said, you know what? Let's reverse engineer our relationship and just look deeper at the things that we do in practice and just share it with people. So something that you may take for granted as, oh, it's just easy, I just got it like that, or you just don't give it a no-brainer, you don't even think about it. That can be an epiphany for someone else, that they're like, oh my God, I was looking for the answer. I was just, that's it, and that's just what we have desired to do. And sometimes if you listen to episodes, we're transparent. We call it being hot. We try to honest, open, and transparent, to where by us exposing some of the things about our relationship, maybe you can get something out of it.
Mm-hmm. I like that. And framework is important, no matter how awesome and fancy a building or a house may be, it all started with the framework, and
Oh,
then
absolutely.
that you build on it.
Absolutely.
And that's great. And so did you ever imagine that you would be impacting people all over the way you are now?
I have only had one prophecy, and the lady who prophesied to me, because I didn't believe in prophecy, neither one of us grew up in church. We got saved as adults. I was 23, and
23.
yeah, we were both 23 when we got saved. And this lady came and she called. I said, well, Lord, if you want me to talk to me, you have to call me out. So I was standing in church, and this lady, somebody walked up to me and said, hey, this lady wants to talk to you. And I was like, okay. And she said, as I saw you standing there, I saw your life. She said, and your life would make someone go, like almost like a sigh.
Wow.
She said, but God has healed you and he's forgiven you. And most of the things weren't even your fault. She said, God is going to give you a ministry of hopes, says the Lord. She said, you'll stand before millions of people and say, if God has done it for me, he'll do it for you. He's going to have you to go in and drag out the people that everyone has forgotten about. And that's the only one prophecy I had. But for so many years, that stand before millions of people paralyzed me, because I was always so insecure and so afraid to talk in front of people. So I feel like God had already kind of told us what was going to happen. We didn't really know what that meant, and we never pursued it. We just took steps towards serving God and serving people. And so I think that God always gives you insight as to the plan, but not the time and all the details. So I think he kind of put the seed in our heart that we were going to do something to really give hope to people. And so I think that that's something that is really necessary. And so to say yes and no, I didn't know totally, but he kind of gave us like a hint. It's like, there's more to your life than just you.
And for me, absolutely not. But naturally, I'm more of an introvert, really, until we are talking about marriage or tech or something that I'm really interested in, because
God
and God, obviously. And so therefore, I didn't think this would even be. We initially started the podcast out. I came to it with Renee for a reason. I was like, because she's always been in the eye of the media and things like that on television shows and stuff like that. So I said, you know what? I got an idea. Let's do a podcast for you.
No, what he said was, you should do a podcast and I'll run it for you.
Yeah, and so I'm really into the tech, the lighting and the cameras and the mics and that kind of stuff. And I said, I'll run it. All you gotta do is jump in front of the camera and do your thing, And so, because she's been on YouTube, oh man, for over 8 years, even before it's what it is now, when it was still in its infancy, really, So I said, you know what, let's do the podcast. But we had no idea about how to do any of this. You go to that YouTube University and start it up, it'll show you some things. And we just spent a weekend, learned it, bought a couple little small things, not really breaking the bank because we didn't know if it was going to last or whatever.
Yeah.
We just started recording. And she said, I think we're supposed to do this together. And I was like, no. So, but here we are, 100 plus episodes later, we still doing it. So
we love it.
That's awesome. That's great. I love that. It's sometimes, God may not show you like the end result, but he'll give you one step at a time. And
absolutely. They say many plans of a man's heart. He has it. He has an orchestration of what he plans to do, but God orders your steps.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
little do you know that it should be the other way around. Your steps has to line up with his plan, not the other way, not your plan lining up with his steps, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I like that. And so, to you, Gil, when I say the word, or when you think about the word husband,
Mhm.
what comes to your mind?
Wow. I would say initially multiple roles,
Hmm.
because as a husband, you know, the easy answer would be provider, caregiver. Those are the things that we naturally just fall into. I think as men, we naturally have the DNA blueprint of providing and protection and
Hmm.
those types of things. That comes natural just as a man. But what I did not know as growing up as a young man and a young married man, really, that there were going to be multiple things that I had to do as a husband that I was totally oblivious to and didn't even know it came in the job description, so to speak.
Mhm.
You know, I thought about it from you're the leader of that, not only yourself, but your household. And if you're only a household of one, you have to be leading your wife down the path, not in a subservient role like a servant, but a leader as Christ led the church. You know, the
Yes.
things that he did, he protected, he took care of, he nurtured
Comfort.
and comforted, all those things. That's what I'm supposed to do as a representation of him. So you think about that. That's one, as a husband, as a leader, as a servant, as a role model. So you have multifaceted things of being a husband. And I think for so many years that I had neglected or didn't even know or was totally ignorant to some of the things that I was supposed to do as a husband. You know, and that's what this is kind of all about, where you're going to always be on a journey of discovering and learning even as being a husband. So I would say it's multifaceted and also multi roles that you're going to play before you walk down that aisle and exchange those rings that you need to be aware of that is going to be required.
Wow. That's true, and it's almost like a rubber band. You know how a rubber band was created to stretch. A rubber band, when you think about it, it helps hold what would normally seem out of place or messy.
Yeah.
It binds it. It bands it together. You know, and so when
Yep.
I think of it, I think of like a rubber band.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and even from the husband aspect, one, I would say probably one of the most significant things that I did not realize was the emotional requirement that was going to be involved. That is something that I had no clue that was going to be required for me to be emotionally stable and things like that as it relates to marriage.
Mhm. Wow. That's true. And so to Renee, the Bible says, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing." So that means she must have the mindset of a wife before she's found.
Hmm.
Otherwise, he'll be looking for something. But if she's not acting like what he's looking for, then she'll possibly get passed by. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think what's really funny is I can remember being probably 18, and I remember standing at the bus in Detroit, and this guy was like, "Are you married?" I was like, "Am I married?" You just seem like a wife.
Wow.
And I'm like, now we weren't even saved. We didn't grow up in church. But it's funny how God will speak things into your life. People, God will use other people to confirm what He's already told you. And so that made me start trying, well, what is a wife? What does it mean to be a wife? Well, what does He mean? What is He talking about? I look like a wife. And so I totally agree. I was a wife when he found me. And I
Hmm.
think that what most women don't understand is that they have the mindset of a girlfriend, but they want the responsibility and the role of a wife.
Wow.
And to differentiate it is that a wife wants to build and save and invest. A girlfriend wants to spend and splurge and be impulsive. And
Yeah.
so to me, I think that I had the mindset of a wife at a very early age
Hmm.
because of the things that I saw, and it made me say I don't want to be like that. So I think that a wife is someone who is sure of who they are, and they
Hmm.
realize that their role is to be a support
Hmm.
and to add more than just your body and your looks, is to add value and direction and guidance and support. And so
Hmm.
yes, I think that those are all things that I think that we're missing in this generation, because
Yeah.
most guys are marrying a girlfriend
Mhm.
and then they're mad that she's not a wife.
Yeah, I like that. That's a real good point. And it's like, a girlfriend just wants to spend the night, but a wife wants to share her life. And a
Yes,
wife is it's almost like an airplane. Not all planes can fly at the same altitude. A single engine jet can't fly at the same altitude as a big 747. And so,
Right.
a wife that's on a whole nother level than simply being a girlfriend.
yes,
Absolutely.
very much so. And that's why I think it's important and that's what's important to me is as an older woman to teach the younger women how to be good wives and how to be good
Yeah.
mothers. And it's by not just telling it, it's by showing them how to do it, And it's not just cooking and cleaning and sewing, and because those things are things you should know how to do. But it's not just that. It's knowing how to follow. It's knowing how to get. Because to me, as a woman, there's liberty in being feminine. There's liberty in me not having the responsibility of everything. I
Mhm.
can support and encourage Gil and be there for him and not feel the responsibility of all of that, but still take on some of the weight of it to lighten his load.
Mhm. That's good. That's good. And I feel like a husband and wife are supposed to complement one another. Like, when we're driving, we have blind spots. So
Oh,
we
yeah.
should be able to look out for one another's blind spots. Be like, watch out for this.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
And you have to be willing to let the person be your support and your eyes. You have to be open, and that requires humility, and it requires respect for that person, and it also requires the Lord in your life because someone telling you something you don't want to hear doesn't always go over very well.
Hmm. Yeah. That's good. Definitely being able to receive constructive criticism, knowing
Hmm.
that it's coming from a good place.
Yeah, yeah.
That's important. So you once stated that marriage has a branding problem. Can you share what you meant by that?
Well, I think that people have an idea that marriage is what they see on these quick platforms, that
Mhm.
it's a romantic balcony, that it's a vacation, that it's a wedding, that it's having a baby, that it's driving a certain kind of car. We put all that out there so people think, oh, wow, marriage is wonderful. And marriage is all of those things, but that's not all of that. That's not all that marriage is. Marriage is selflessness. Marriage is sacrifice. Marriage is long suffering. Marriage
Yeah.
is waiting. Marriage is submission. Marriage is um, trusting that the other person has your back. And I think we don't show enough of um, the other part of
The
marriage, the
reality.
reality of marriage. We show all the fun and the games, but we don't show the work and the sacrifice and the commitment and the selflessness that it
Yeah.
really takes to be married.
People don't think about marriage in the context of work. Everybody says, just like I said at the beginning of this interview, that work on your marriage. Well, work is, when you think about that, most people think it's not fun. It's some
Yeah,
laborious. It's something that you're going to be sweating in. You're going to be working hard, whether it's mentally or physically. And while that may be true, it's something that you have to go in knowing that
it's going to be
it's
worth
going
it.
to be work. And I
Mhm.
think when it comes to that branding side, they just showing, like Renee was just describing, the vacations and all,
Yeah.
just the good
Yeah.
side of it. We call it the rose colored glasses, where everything just looks amazing and it looks interesting. Well, I love movies when you see the outtakes or the behind the scenes, and
Yeah.
you don't see that hundred and something people behind the camera that's working hard to make this one image look really, really great. So
Mhm.
that's kind of an idea when she was talking about it from the branding aspect that you think about.
We have a pool, and so most people just show pictures of them sitting by the pool
The
and
blue water,
blue water. They don't show you cleaning the pool. Well, we show us
sweeping
cleaning
it,
the pool.
vacuuming it, all the chemicals that you got to put
And
in
when
it.
it's green,
Oh my,
you take the thing off and it's green. We're gonna show you the real deal. We're gonna show
That's the
you
real deal, right
right.
that.
That's good. That's good, and that's so important. And I think a big part of working on your marriage is really like working on yourself and working on
Absolutely.
It
your
is.
patience level. It's one thing, to do work, say you go to a 9 to 5 job and you're doing work for someone else, but when you have to dig deep and work on your internal being, that's
Yes.
like
Yes.
another, and that's what it takes, in order for the best version of yourself to come forth.
We always tell our couples that marriage always get blamed for the problems, and it's not marriage is the problem. It's two individuals that have things that they need to work on, whether it's childhood of origin issues or unresolved conflicts that they
Selfishness,
all
self-centeredness.
these individual attributes that they bring into the marriage, and then marriage gets the blame for it, that
Yeah.
irreconcilable differences, and he doesn't understand me or she doesn't understand me, and all these things go back and forth, and then marriage gets to blame when people go their separate ways, when
Yeah.
you still got to work on yourself. We talk about that in our episodes. That's kind of like one of the foundational pillars of what we talk about is self-assessment. You got to constantly be doing that for yourself if you want to get better at this thing called relationships.
Yeah, because I always say if you suck at being single, you're gonna suck at being married.
That's
Yeah, everything that I just said, she just gives you the little.
Stop blaming marriage. It ain't because you're married.
that's yeah. That's good. That's great. That's great, though. It definitely makes sense. And so, you once did a video called "Thank You Rejection," and you talked about how rejection is more about preference, not value. And it was awesome because you gave the example of ice cream, for instance. And just because someone may not like chocolate ice cream doesn't take away the value from that ice cream. It just means, they don't like that's a person's preference. Yeah. So, like, with that video, what inspired you to do that?
Well, we have YouTube mentors, and I am learning that YouTube is more about giving people what they want and not what you feel they want to hear. And
Mhm.
so we have mentors that we follow their lead. It's like, okay, this is because there's different ways. And you have to listen to God, but you have to also understand that God has put people in your life for a reason.
Yeah.
And for me, I understood that rejection was something that was a big part of what happens to us, and that if you don't talk about it, then it's going people blame other people for things that really are internal. And so I think the inspiration was one, our mentors, and two, knowing that everything that happens, you've experienced it, and knowing how to share it with people. It's the timing. It's not just the content, the quality of the content, it's also the timing, and
Yeah.
understanding that there are certain things that people are talking about and need insight on, and you can share your own insight on it. So that's what made us talk about it.
And so many people that are struggling with I love the term that they call it now, the imposter syndrome, that has been around forever. It's called insecurity.
Yeah.
So you just going through some things that you will carry stuff around with you for years, thinking I didn't get picked because I got picked last for the basketball team or dodgeball, or this group or this certain group of kids at the cool lunch table didn't pick me, or all those things, and you'll carry that stuff for years, thinking something is wrong with you when it's not.
Yeah.
And so we try to give it a colorful identity. Wow, we just had something slide behind us. We're like, what's going on? So a colorful phrase just to let people know that you're okay.
Yeah.
You may not be somebody's preference, but don't take that to heart and think you're not valuable, because everybody's valuable.
Yeah, we're all valuable.
I like that. And it's also important for people to remember that they're not for everyone, but they're for someone.
Right,
No,
right,
no.
absolutely.
No, you're not.
And you got to be okay with that. It's different when you're just not adjusting, or you're just, we call them, if you're that old guy and you're a curmudgeon and everything sets you off, or you're that mean girl, everything sets you off. That's that self-assessment again that goes back to that you may need to alter your behavior a little bit, but don't think there's something wrong with you at the core. Take it to heart from that perspective.
Because I feel like we're all under construction and we're all growing. And I think that when you realize that, hey, you mean you went through that? You mean you went? So the more, because the enemy wants us to be isolated and feel like what we're going through is so unique. But, we always say that you're unique, your situation is not. Everyone has experienced rejection. Everyone has experienced, having low self-esteem. Everyone has experienced insecurity. And so the more you talk about it, we believe that if you talk it out, you won't act it out. You don't have to act it out alone by yourself.
Yeah, that's so true. It says people are overcome by the word of their testimony.
That's right.
need to see Jesus scars,
Yeah.
showing those wounds. And sometimes, ministry definitely requires a level of transparency where we can, in order to help someone else, we got to be like, look,
Yeah.
this was from when this happened, and be
Right.
Yeah.
willing to
Because
be open.
yeah, we have those scars, and people can learn a lot from the things that you've experienced,
If
and
you
that's a
share it.
part of your testimony.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you asked us at the very beginning about how did this all come about, and that's just what we've been trying to do.
Yeah. Because I believe that, to me, I think the church spends so much time telling people what not to do
Yeah.
versus showing them what to do. I think that people are more receptive to you showing them what to do. Because even, we try to make sure that we don't say, well, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. That doesn't work. This
Yeah.
is what we're doing. Come on with us.
And break it down to whether it's steps or lists or something, call to
Call to
action,
action.
whatever, just so you can take and say, I could do that,
Yeah.
or I could try that.
Mhm. That's good. That's good. I like that. And also, like, as you mentioned, knowing your value is it's great. Sometimes kids, they'll run around in a department store and they'll put cheap labels on something expensive. And so when it comes to people, it's important that you don't allow someone else's opinion or perspective of you to cause you to lower your value of
Yes.
yourself.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I feel in a lot of instances, especially during the pandemic, it brought a lot of things to the surface that had always been there. And unfortunately, within marriages, it revealed I would call it like the pandemic within the pandemic among many couples. Do you feel that to be true?
One of the things that we recognized during the pandemic is we've always worked with couples virtually before it was like a thing. We were doing that.
Yeah.
But during the pandemic, there was like such an outcry of people saying, because the thing is, most people are so busy, they don't realize how bad things were.
Hmm.
And then the pandemic made people slow down, and all the activities and all of the things that were a distraction were not available. So then now you're like, oh, I didn't realize it was this bad. It's like, oh, it's that bad. So I don't think that the pandemic was the cause. I think the pandemic was, for a lot of us, an opportunity to stop and be still and really listen to God and get things in order. So when people say that the pandemic caused divorce, no, the pandemic caused what was already going to happen. It
Yeah.
accelerated it.
Yeah. And it actually revealed some things that were left unchecked or
Mhm.
unexamined or unresolved, all these unthings that they didn't just ignore. And then all of a sudden you're forced to be in the same room or same house with each other for what we thought was going to be 2 weeks, end up being 2 years,
Yeah.
and now all of a sudden you're like, who is this person that I'm with, and then it could be a good thing too.
It was good
because
for us. We loved it.
it was good
Yeah.
because we did the whole podcast and a lot of things got
Wrote
birthed.
3 books.
Yes.
It just depends on the individuals.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's if you took that time and said, you know what, babe, let's reconnect.
Mhm.
We have strayed away. We just did an episode about drifting apart. We gave you some lists and some things about it. That was a perfect opportunity to re-examine and reevaluate and reconnect. So just like it did some undoing things, it also did some reconnecting and some reestablishing some things.
Yeah. I like that. That's true. And it's almost how like the pandemic was a flashlight to reveal, as you
Yes.
said.
It
Yeah.
showed where you were.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
exposed us to the reality that, people say absence makes the heart grow fonder. Absence only gives the heart the opportunity to do what it was going to do. If it was going to wander, it's going to wander. If it's going to grow fonder, it's going to grow fonder. It's not the absence, it's the condition of the heart. So I think with the pandemic, it wasn't a pandemic. It just gave us an opportunity to see. Like you said, it was a flashlight.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. I'm gonna have to go back myself and watch this. This is definitely some good nuggets.
Oh, thank you.
Definitely. How do you feel? How important do you feel it is for couples to be able to budget together and to be able to have financial agreement?
I would say from the money aspect, everybody, if you've been around the relationship space, that's always in the top 2 or 3 issues that people experience. That is the financial side of it. I think about it when we got married, we both had different philosophies about money. And I was like, if you got it, spend it as long as your bills are taken care of.
Mhm.
Enjoy yourself, knock yourself out. But I also always wanted to have more things later on in life, but
Mhm.
I didn't have good habits. And I think that's where Renee was very instrumental in showing me that, okay, if you say you want ABC down the road, we got to do C, D, and E now.
Yeah.
And she was better at the financial management at the time when we first got married. So if you partner in, even when it comes to money, if you partner in just like anything else in your relationship and come to an understanding with each other and communicate and compromise, doesn't have to be a major stumbling block. It's very, very important that you have the same foundational principles and ideas about what are we going to do with finances. That's kind of like one of the things that you need to be talking about
Yeah.
before you get that ring, to say, this is my ideal and how I see money. How do you see it?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to cause an argument or a conflict. That's a point of discussion to where you say, well, this is how I see it. How do you see it?
Mhm.
And so it's an opportunity, just like most things, is for you to discuss. So it's very vitally important.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's important that couples, because somebody asked us, do you think couples should share accounts? Well, just like you just explained, one person may be better at managing money than the other. So it is important that when you come together as a couple and become one, that your finances are one. But it's also good for you guys to both have an allowance so that you can spend on and do things. Because we realize if you want to surprise each other, you can't, because
Mhm.
everything is joint together.
Yeah.
So your money should be together, because that's one of the easiest ways for the enemy to divide you, because it's something else that you do every day that you're not talking about. So when you put your money together as a couple, that gives you another way to connect. And
Mhm.
so we believe that your account should be together, and you still should have like an allowance or whatever separately that
Yeah.
you take care of.
Yeah, that was for us because we were so broke. We barely, when we started out, we built all of it together. So we didn't have nothing that I was trying to protect and hold
Mhm.
back. And I know everybody is a little bit different in their
Right.
relationship,
And the ages.
especially those who got married later in life and they built a life before they got with this person or connected their lives together. And that's understandable. You have to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
financially astute about those types of things. But still, that doesn't stop you from merging things together
Right.
either. You can protect yourself without being separate.
Right.
Yeah. That's so true. And also the power of agreement
Oh
is
yeah.
definitely important because, a house divided against itself, it can't,
Yes.
can't
Yep.
stand.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's
Absolutely.
those little small things that when you don't talk about them, it leaves room for you to come to your own conclusion versus just communicating. The more you communicate about everything, the
Yeah.
closer you're going to be, and the easier your relationship is going to go in the same direction, because you're not fighting against one another.
Yeah. And it's like when you think about it, like there's already to fight with. You already got the devil doing his thing. So why, like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not good. I had a question. A lot of times I've heard, especially women say there's no good single men out there. So like, do you feel that's true, or maybe it's just they aren't hanging out in the same places, or how would you address that the statement?
Well, I will lead with I have been married since I've been with the same man since I was 18. So I don't want to step into a lane I have no credibility in. But I will say that I believe that there are good men out there, just like I believe there are good women out there. But I
Mhm.
also believe that, and this is what I believed when I was dating, I didn't want to meet a guy at the club because I felt like that was where he was going to be.
Mhm.
I wouldn't want to meet a guy on a dating app because I feel like that's where he's going to be. So I think that there's places you can go, like where single people are, like Home Depot. I just think there's places that men go, that that's where I think you should be, versus expecting for them they're going to find you at your house. They're not. Just like I took the initiative to let you know I was interested. I think that as single women, you have to take the initiative to let them know. And I think that you have to be available.
Mhm.
And so,
And even just one thing that came to mind for me with that one is you have to know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
There's no good men out there. Well, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
It goes back to what you originally said at the beginning about finding a wife. Well, if you're looking for those characters and quality of a wife, what are the characters and qualities of a husband that you're looking for? If it's a guy sitting there playing his video games and not going to work and those types of things. While video games in and of itself are not bad, but if that's your primary thing, unless it's your job,
Yeah.
it can be a big distraction and a
Right.
problem, to the point to where it's going to cause a problem in your long-term relationships. I'm just using that one as an example, but you have to know, are you looking for a guy that's going to do what? What's your list? What are you
Yeah.
looking for? So if you don't know what you're looking for, you probably are going to be just picking up whatever is the first thing that comes to mind, whether it was a nice looking guy, a guy who had a lot of money, or a guy who drove a nice car, a guy who had a nice pair of shoes on, or a nice watch. If those are the things that you were focused on,
Mhm.
you probably are going to, we always say, maybe the picker is broke. You got to look
Yeah.
at something a little bit different to
Yeah.
know what you're doing. How many people go to the grocery store and have no idea what they're looking for? You go there because you have something, a need that
Yeah.
you want. So you
Yeah.
go there and get that need first, and then you may look at something else later. Not saying that means go and get multiple things.
Yeah. I get it. And on that same note, I believe, definitely believe it's good. It's good. You don't want to get to the point of desperation because then you'll get anything. It's almost like going grocery shopping when you're
Hungry.
already
When you're hungry,
hungry.
I was thinking about that too.
That's the
Yeah,
first
you
thing
should
they
never
tell you.
shop when
Don't
you're
do it.
hungry.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Or using that same analogy, if you just coming out of a bad relationship and it was bad and you just need a break, but then you jump right back into another one,
Yeah.
that's a prime example of what that means. That statement: don't go to the grocery store when you're hungry.
Yeah.
Don't jump right back into a relationship when you've been hurt.
Yeah. You have to allow, time to heal, repair,
Yes,
reassess, and yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I think it's really important for people to become what they're looking for. I think so many times people have this expectation of what they want the other person to be, but they've not spent the time to become that person themselves. So I would always say, write a list of what you're looking for, and then you become the list. Because I
Mm,
think that you're going to attract what you are, not what you want. And so if everybody, if there are no good men and there are no good women, maybe you're not a good man, maybe you're not a good woman. So I think that you should become what you're looking for.
Because that person who's looking for something good and you're not that thing, whose fault is that?
wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's real. That's good. That's good. Become what you're looking for.
Yeah.
That's
Because the Bible says in order to have friends, you got to be friendly. In order
Mhm.
to find a husband, then you got to be a wife. In order to find a wife, you got to be a husband.
Mhm. That's so true. As some so true. And so I'm sure as most people I don't care for snakes either, but one thing I do appreciate about them is that they understand the power of shedding and make getting rid of the old to make room for the new. So even before a person gets married, it's definitely important for them to shed off that single mentality.
Oh
You
yeah.
can't keep doing the same thing expecting different results. And it's also like we're able to measure and differentiate between seasons. You can't go into the winter coat work great for winter, but now it's 98 degrees outside. And
Right.
if you go outside in 98-degree weather with the winter coat, you won't feel good. You won't look good. It's just,
No.
it won't be good. So
Right. Right.
getting rid of the old to make room for the new is definitely important. What are your, you'd agree or?
Well, thinking about that, even just using that snake analogy, when it sheds that skin, that means it grew. It was
Mm,
growth there.
mm,
So just like when you're that single person and you are growing into the next phase of your life, there should be some positive growth there that you are getting off of, you or shedding away from. Just like we talked about the financial thing. When I used to just go out and just spend money on all my CDs and stuff like that, well, I had to grow up a little bit and realize that I can't just do what I wanted to do like I was when I was single. Now I
yeah.
have another person that I have to consider. There's another person I have to think about when I make those decisions. And when I do that, that's a definite sign of growth.
Mhm.
And I
That's,
think about it just like, everyone's talking about the summer body. Well, summer bodies are built in the winter.
hmm.
And so, in order to be ready for the next stage in your life, you have to prepare for that before that time comes. And so, I think so many times we're expecting for change to happen overnight, but it doesn't. It happens gradually. And so I think that you have to have the mindset of knowing what to let go of, because if you only have two hands, you can't hold on to everything that God has for you if both of your hands are full. So
Yes.
we're really big on downsizing and letting go and purging and making room for, like, if I buy a pair of shoes, I try to get rid of a pair of shoes. I don't
Mhm.
always do that, and Gil was probably like, no,
No, she
no.
don't.
Yeah.
No, she don't. Let's be real. Let's be
but
hot.
but it's just a matter of realizing that when your space is limited, you have to limit what you have. And
Yeah,
sometimes having less space makes you have less stuff. And so, yes, I do believe that you have to get rid of the old to make room for the new.
Yes.
I like that. That's some good things. And I was wondering, like, if there's a couple listening or watching this who may be merging together and talking about marriage, and you've kind of already answered this, but what tools of success or advice would you give them as they're on the brink of their new journey together?
I would start out and say what we kind of mentioned earlier. The biggest thing that has been instrumental for me in marriage is self assessments. So,
Okay.
me constantly looking at myself and saying, what can I do better? What can I
Mhm.
do to be better at marriage and kind of meet Renee's needs before she even knows she has a need.
Yes.
Become a student of my wife, just like I was a student in college, to where I knew I had to invest time, effort, and energy if I wanted to pass that class.
Mhm.
Same thing with your marriage. If you want to have a successful marriage, you're going to have to invest some time, effort, and energy into making it and developing it to be in what you really, really want. And you don't even, after being married 35 years, you don't know how good it is when you invest in it, when you're at the beginning.
Yeah.
When you're in that first, second, I would say between 1 to 5 years, let's just use it as a gauge. Those first years, you're just still learning each other. You're still
Mhm.
growing. You're still moving out of that singleness into becoming this united one, because it doesn't happen when you walk down the aisle.
No.
It's developed over time. And
Yeah.
the longer you've been together, the better that development should show, and it should be growth in you as an individual. So I would say for me, self-assessment is probably key at the very beginning.
And
Yeah.
I would say the most important part that I think that most of us don't realize the value of is that's having a relationship with Jesus Christ. Because I don't believe that your marriage will be sustainable,
Mhm.
because God created marriage. And so, therefore, since He created it, I believe that He has to be a part of the process, because some of
Yeah.
the things that you're asked or expected to do is not human nature.
Mhm.
Selflessness, kindness, compassion, empathy, putting the other person first, submission, uh, giving yourself, presenting yourself to some, all of those are things that are not human nature. So I would say having a relationship with Christ is the most important part of having a healthy marriage, because I mean having an eternal marriage, because my grandparents weren't believers and they had a good marriage, but the benefits of it don't go into eternity. So I believe that when you have a relationship with God, your marriage is great in the earth, but then there's going to be dividends for that in eternity. And
Yes.
so I believe that having a relationship with Christ is the especially for women, because if your identity is your husband, he's going to die.
Mhm.
If your identity is your wife, she's going to die. And
Mhm.
so I think that it's important that our relationship with God keeps marriage in its proper place, and it
Mhm.
keeps your spouse in their proper place, and it keeps you in your proper place. And I was just telling you this today. Marriage is God's gift to humanity. I love marriage on God's terms.
Yes.
Nothing and no one can take the place of what God does when He puts you together and He keeps you together. It is beautiful.
Amen. That's awesome, man. Having God in your marriage is so important. It's like it's almost like trying to use an appliance like the refrigerator or dishwasher, but not consulting the manufacturer about
Yes,
how to operate it. You're just trying to do your own thing, and
Right.
it
yes,
doesn't turn out good. So when people try to operate in the marriage without the operator or the creator of the marriage,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, he created it. So I think he pretty much knows how it's supposed to work if
yeah,
you consult him.
And and if you're trying to play Monopoly with the rules to Uno,
It's not going to be a fun
You
game.
can do it, but you're not gonna get the results that you're trying to achieve.
Or you're going to say
Yeah.
that person's cheating.
Something wrong with that game. No, it's not the game. You're using the wrong rules, or consult them. And even when you're putting something together,
Yeah.
read the instructions. You finish putting it together, you realize you got 25 pieces left, and you wonder why it's broken.
Or it's rickety, or it's going to shake.
Read the instructions.
Man.
God created us, He created marriage. I think He knows what He is doing.
You shouldn't have extra parts left over.
Yeah. That, it's one thing in trying to put something, together like a desk or something, but like a marriage, you want to make sure everything is tightly fastened.
Absolutely.
Yes. And that can't happen without the operations manual, the right tools, the time, and the training.
And that's what Rich Relationship Refuge kind of tries to provide.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So Rich Relationships Refuge, and you also shared this earlier. The podcast, it's amazing because obviously it's another way to reach people. How long have you had that?
Oh, we talked about the big world event earlier. Well, that was birthed during that big world event. We started it in 2020 and went for 2 years straight.
Yeah.
No
every
breaks, week,
no days off.
putting out episodes because one, there was a big need, and
Yeah.
two, there was something that we just wanted to get out there because nobody knew what was going to happen, and people were struggling, and people were going through some real issues, and we just wanted to contribute and provide a refuge to help them with that, and so right now I think this week will be at episode 114. I think it is coming up this Friday.
Yeah.
That we'll do it, and we really incorporated the live session just like we talked about before we started the episode here, seeing each other and hearing, but we've realized from the YouTube channel that for some reason people like to watch at the same time. So
the podcast, and our podcast was a podcast. It was
just
a podcast
audio,
is audio, for those of you who don't know.
And we added the video element.
And then we did YouTube. And then we realized that people really do like, because some of our old episodes of our podcast are on YouTube and it's only audio. And in January we really committed to building our YouTube community and building our audience. And so now we have a total of 410 videos on YouTube pertaining to relationships, and there's probably a few about plant-based nutrition and us traveling. But it's just realizing that people need a place where they can connect and they can grow, and we love it. It's a way for us. We feel like when we're gone, the things that God put in our heart are going to be here forever to kind of help the next generation and the next generation and the next generation.
Yes, and speaking of rich relationships, it definitely leaves a rich legacy, as you said, for the next generation.
And that wasn't something that we set out to do. We just wanted to help because we knew that there was a need. We had already been working with couples for over 18 years, even before we even started doing this, so that just added on to what we were already doing. It's just another tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, that's it. And so where can people tune into the podcast?
Our audio podcast is on every single podcasting platform. So if you go to any of them, Apple, Spotify, every single one of them, we're on there, Rich Relationship Refuge. And then our YouTube channel is Rich Relationship Refuge. And our website is Rich Relationship. Everything, all of our podcast, social media, and our YouTube channel is which we're really that's where we really are, is on YouTube. We're there every Friday live, and so we love it.
And I love because you could just say, type in Gil and Renee in your search engine, and probably one of those things are going to pop up. That's due to all the hard work that Renee does. That behind the scenes stuff that we talked about earlier. It doesn't get up there automatically, and it definitely don't get up there because of me. It's all because of her.
That's great. You guys are phenomenal. I'm subscribed to the channel, and I
appreciate
Thank you.
Yes,
if you comment, we'll comment back.
Okay, definitely.
And we'll subscribe to your channel too.
Okay, thank you. And so recently you did an episode, 5 Signs You're Ready for Marriage. Are you able to share those 5? What the 5?
Oh wow. Yes. right off the top, if you
Well,
remember,
the first sign is communication. That's I think the
this may not be in order, but we'll get them there.
I think one of the most important signs that you have to both want to be married. It
Yeah.
can't just be one person that wants to
Hmm.
be married. You have to both agree because sometimes women are already buying bride books and they're already ready to get, but you have to both be wanting to be
Hmm.
married. You have to not be selfish
Yeah.
because that's another big thing. Sometimes you don't realize that marriage is not for the selfish. Marriage
Amen.
is for the selfless.
Amen.
Emotionally, we kind of actually touched on it even just in
Yeah.
our discussion
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Emotionally connected, you got to have that emotional maturity to get married. I think we have an episode out there about the EQ,
Emotional intelligence.
emotional intelligence,
Hmm.
and then you have to have those shared values.
Yeah.
If we're walking down the road and we're going in different directions, when we get to that fork in the road, more than likely we're not going to stay together. And we talked about money. You even kind of asked about that financial,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to be financially mature. If you're not, you're going to have a bigger problem. You're already going into the relationship with a deficit, and that's a no pun intended. You're actually going into it with the negative on your balance sheet,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think one of the biggest things is having a relationship with God,
Hmm.
your
Yeah.
shared faith.
Yep.
Because if you have
Shared
different,
values.
if you
Shared
have
values.
different, if you have different faith system, it makes it really hard to be on one accord when you believe one thing and they believe another thing. For
Yeah.
us, we were both unsaved. Neither one of us knew the Lord. And so when I got saved, I was able to lead Gil to Christ. But that's hard. So it's like those are the things, communication, being
Emotional
selflessly,
values.
the
Shared
emotional
values.
intelligence,
And
having a shared faith and
I,
having the same understanding of money.
I think we even said that even during the episode. Wow, that list we broke down five, but
Yeah.
it's not all inclusive. There's a whole lot more to that working on your marriage thing.
Yeah.
But those are
Yeah.
probably some of the top ones that we've seen just from working with couples.
Definitely. Those are all definitely important. And, yes, communication is important. And big part of communication is understanding, making sure the other person heard what
Yep.
was
Yes.
said. The Bible says, husbands, dwell with your wives according to knowledge. And,
Yep.
Proverbs 4:7 says, yeah, wisdom great, get wisdom, but with all thy getting, get understanding. And
Get
that's
Right.
understanding.
marriage.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And it's understanding that communication is listening and talking. And most people just know how to talk, but they don't listen to understand, not to interpret, not to get them to change their mind, but listening to understand is an important part of communication.
And I would say, even from the years that we've been working with couples, that's probably one of the common topics that we go over with all couples, regardless if they were in a great position or a great state. And it's kind of like more of a tune up, or those who are in a position that they really have some things that they need to work through. Communication is usually going to come up most times. And it always goes back to the assertive speech and active listening.
Yeah.
Those two common denominators.
And we also find that we have a communication assessment, and we have it on our site. It's free. Is
Mhm.
sometimes the problem is that they're good listeners, they're good communicators, they're assertive, but sometimes their communication styles are the problem. So if you have two people who have the same communicate, if you have two direct communicators, then that's going to be a problem because you both want to be Gil's is ours is different, so we can kind of we complement each other. When your
Yeah.
communication styles are the same, it's hard because you're butting heads all the time, and so it's just knowing, the communication is talking and listening, but your communication style, it does play a role in it as well.
Yeah, it's definitely hard when you're not aware of it. When you're not
Yeah.
aware, hey, I'm a director, and and the other person is an intern or a visionary.
Mhm.
It's out there. If you don't know, understand what we're talking about, it's out there. Go look at it.
Yeah, it's on our
And
website.
it'll break it down for you. It
Yes.
matters, and we give you some of the things to listen for and look at, and how to
Mhm.
communicate with other people, which
Yeah.
is instrumental.
And I believe, like, how when you go to another country, you learn about the other country, you learn about the dialect of the other country even
And
before
their
you go in.
culture.
And so when you're transitioning, especially from singlehood into marriage, it's important to learn the dialect of the marriage, to learn how the other person, communicates so you can operate and move about, with clarity and understanding.
It's just like what we kind of mentioned earlier. I had to learn to speak Relay's language. While we both speak English, sometimes we can have different sayings or different wording that we think we know what they mean, and it means something totally different. That's a part of learning that dialect. We got the Beavers dialect.
Yeah.
So we actually
I speak Gil.
I speak Renee. So when we actually do that, you'll know you're in tune and in sync when you can communicate and finish each other's sentences or even communicate without even using words.
I'm gonna give you an example. Today I went to the grocery store and I didn't have my phone. And I'm like, okay, Lord, let's see how connected we are. I said, Lord, please let Gil come to the car. And I kept saying, babe, I'm not in the store. Come to the car. Babe, I said, Lord, please let him know because I don't want him to walk around the store. And I looked and he was coming walking. He was walking out the store. He said, well, it was just kind of common sense. I felt like, I was going to bring the boxes out here. And if you weren't at the car, I was going to go back into the store. So I think sometimes, we can hope for negative things. But you can also hope for positive things too.
Yeah. I like that. That's great. Being on one accord, synchronization.
That's it.
That's good. Do you feel that if more people prepared for the actual marriage as much as they prepare for the wedding day, there'd be more successful marriages?
Ooh, don't get us on this. Don't get us on this.
Man, we already been going an hour. You asking for a whole another hour.
No.
Yes.
Yes. I think that people spend more money on
the event.
And they don't realize that it's going to cost them more for a divorce. So I think it's important that people get premarital. We do premarital. That's how we started with doing premarital. Mm-hmm. If you would buy a car and you would learn, you gotta get a driver's license. If you're going to drive a motorcycle, if you want to fish, mm-hmm. you should get some training so that you won't be expected to do something that you're not trained to do. So yes, I think that if we would invest as much time and energy in the wedding as we did in the marriage as we did the wedding, we would have a whole lot less.
I have a whole lot of respect for a pastor of a church that we attended that basically said, people sometimes think pastors know everything as it relates to life and relationships and all those types of things. And he was the first one that I've ever heard that was in the active ministry leading a church saying, you know what, I'm not the one to talk to.
Yeah, I got people for that.
I'm an excellent communicator and I know the Bible in and out and those types of things. I can give you some scriptures and tell you some things. But when you want to know the intricacies and details of what it takes to be married in a relationship, there are people who specialize in that area that have been called to that area that can help you a whole lot better than he can. While he may be your favorite pastor, preacher, teacher, you want someone that this is what they do on a regular basis. And that's what we kind of try to provide. So that investment of time, effort, and energy that we always keep talking about, that's what you really, really want to invest in. So when you're in that dating stage, you're going through the things that it's going to take to be married. And that's what mentors and counselors and people who have been in this marriage game, as they say, can help you with.
And we love marriage.
Yes.
Absolutely believe in it, love it. And I think that, it's important to have people who love you and your husband, love God, love you and your husband, and love marriage. Because if they only love you,
or only love me,
it's not going to work. It's
going to be a problem.
So you need someone who loves God and the both of you and marriage. Because some people may love you and your husband and they may not love God and they may not love marriage. You need all those things together because marriage is something that God takes. He really takes it, he counts it as serious. So therefore, you want to make sure you don't mishandle it or that you don't go into it not knowing what it really means.
Mm-hmm. Amen. And that's one thing I really appreciate you guys offer that support and encouragement. On the animal planet, it's always an animal who's trying to do his own thing, the one who's disconnected from the group that predator goes after. Yeah, and so likewise, when marriages have one another and have other people to glean from it, it helps.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny that you said that is when you go out and try to be the lone individual, that's when the problems happen. You get targeted, you get focused on for as a meal.
Yeah. You become someone's snack.
Yeah.
Bill loves the Animal Planet.
I'm with you. I like that. You were doing. We done threw some snakes out there. We done some predators. See, I'm digging that.
That's real. It's true.
Yeah.
And so you guys obviously do a lot of hard work, and I believe in working hard and playing hard. So, like, how do you guys balance and how do you guys relax and recharge?
We don't believe in balance. We believe in prioritizing.
Amen.
So we prioritize time, downtime. Gil is better at relaxing and prioritizing downtime than I am. And
Yeah.
so he sometimes he has to say, "Hey, come
Hey.
here."
Yep. Come on. We got to sit down. We gonna watch a movie, or we gonna do a road trip, or we gonna go
Yeah.
somewhere. We're
We
avid
love
RVers.
travel.
Yeah, we
We
traveling
love
and things.
travel.
But our favorite mode of traveling is RV.
Yeah.
You know,
All
we
right.
have an RV that if you see the channel, we even show it on
His
sometimes that
name is Richie.
we'll do some things and we'll go some places and that's is relaxing to me. For me, driving is a big relaxing factor.
Yeah.
So I'll jump in the driver's seat and we'll just go somewhere and see something. You know, I
Yes.
like to say, go see something.
Yeah.
You know,
We like experiences. We're not big things people. We like experiences and memories. And like for me, I love, creating content. I love videos and Gil loves
photography.
photography.
Yeah,
And so we really enjoy just creating memories, things that you can actually, not necessarily things, but just creating memories and, enjoying each other's company.
Oh, that's awesome. You guys are great. And finally, how can people connect with you?
They can go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. That's the most interactive platform for us because that's where we're really pouring our hearts into. Because of all the places we've used, YouTube has been the most responsive,
Mhm.
and we feel more like it's a community. And so we are all on all the platforms, but the best way to reach out to us would be through our YouTube channel. And just say you subscribe to, David, through your channel, and then you'll
Right,
know
sure.
where they came from. But
Mhm.
we're just that's YouTube is probably the best one. Rich Relationship Refuge, and then of course
the website if you want the website if you want to know anything about what we do and
and
any
our
of the
blog.
services is richrelationshiprefuge.com. We got it right there on the bottom of under our names right there,
Yeah.
so you can actually just go there and find out anything and find us with anything we're doing.
Awesome. You guys have been awesome, amazing. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you for
so
having
much.
us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. Well, again, you guys, I thank you again for tuning in. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you've been greatly blessed by this episode and by
Thank
Gil
you.
and Renee and all that they've shared. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And feel free, as they were saying, to reach out for them, especially for um, identity courses as well as, relationship strengthening courses or anything you may need. They are phenomenal.
Well, thank you.
So, as always, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you've been blessed, and thank you as always for rocking and rolling with me. It's been a great in this 8 seasons now, so I'm truly grateful.
Congratulations.
Thank you. When I started back in October of 2019, I never would have imagined. I was just like, okay, here we go.
That's it.
Yeah, so I'm grateful for that. So as always, this is BDP, Brian David Porter, still living in purpose, on purpose, intentionally. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Love y'all to life.
Bye.